What's good, everybody? My name is Sway, and we're back talking NFL Pick'ems Week 17. There's only 2 weeks left of the season, and I didn't get it done this week. I went 11-5, and I got 2 weeks to see if I can get it perfect. Starting off with last Thursday's game, Broncos and Chargers. The Broncos took an early lead, but then they choked in the end. The Chargers ended up getting the win at home, and now the Broncos are fighting for their playoff life these last 2 weeks. Next up, the Saturday games. First up, Texans and Chiefs. Tough blow for the Texans. I really thought they had a chance to go on the road and beat the Chiefs. And they actually made it a game into the third quarter, but after the Tank Dell injury, when he went down, it's kind of like the whole team got deflated and the Chiefs ended up winning. And just a side note, I really hope Tank Dell is all right. I hope it's not a career-threatening injury. If he has to miss all of next season, so be it. But hopefully it's nothing further than that. Moving on to the Steelers and Ravens. The Steelers just haven't been the same without George Pickens. It was a good game in the second quarter, but when Russell Wilson scrambled up towards the goal line and he fumbled, that really changed the game around, and the Ravens ended up blowing them out. Next up, Giants and Falcons. We know the Giants aren't a good team. The Falcons ended up blowing them out. Moving on to the Bears and Lions. Similar game to the Giants. The Bears are just not a good team right now. They need to figure out their whole staff situation going into next year. And the Lions did what they had to do. They got another win. Moving on to the Cardinals and Panthers. I can't believe the Cardinals let this one slip away. They still had their playoff hopes on the line, and now they're eliminated. Next up, Rams and Jets. Classic Jets. They lost again at home, and the Rams are in the driver's seat to win their division. Next up, Philly and Washington. We know what happened to Jalen Hurts. He went out with a concussion, never came back. Kenny Pickett actually did pretty well. He had a decent game, but that drop at the end from Devontae Smith really cost them, and Washington came back on the last drive and won the game. Next up, Browns and Bengals. We know the Browns aren't a good team. The Bengals are still fighting for their playoff hopes, and they got the win. Next up, Titans and Colts. Again, Titans are another bad team. Colts got the win at home, and they're still alive in the playoff hunt. Next up, Vikings and Seahawks. This was actually a pretty good game. It kept going back and forth, but the Vikings ended up getting a big win on the road. Next up, Patriots and Bills. We struggled again at the beginning of the game, but we found a way to get it done in the end and got the win. Next up, Jags and Raiders. This was a battle of two bad teams. The Raiders just ended up getting the win in the end. Next up, Niners and Dolphins. Two teams that were actually still alive in the playoff hunt, even if it was by a slim margin. But the Niners just choked again, and Miami got the win. Next up, Bucks and Cowboys. I don't even know how the hell the Cowboys won. They only won by 2 points, but this is more on the Bucks. They're letting their playoff hopes slip away. Next up, the Monday night game, Saints and Packers. We knew this was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to be a shutout, but the Packers really put a beat down on them. So with that being said, I did end up going 11-5. My losses were the Cardinals, Eagles, Jags, Bucks, and Texans, and hopefully I can do better this week. Starting off with the Christmas games. First up, Steelers and Chiefs. Obviously, I already saw the games. Today's Friday. I did pick the Steelers to win, and they just couldn't get it done at home, and they didn't even keep it close. They got blown out. Next up, Ravens and Texans. I already had the Ravens winning this game. They saw what happened to the Steelers. They're fighting for the division, and now they're in the lead. Next up, the Thursday game, Seahawks and Bears. I didn't think it was going to be that ugly, but I did have Seattle winning because we all know the Bears are just not a good team, but they got the win, and they're still alive in the playoff hunt. Next up, the Saturday games. First up, Chargers and Patriots. The Chargers are still fighting for seeding. I think right now they're at the 6th seed, but they could possibly move up to the 5th seed if the Steelers keep losing. Next up, the big game of the week, Broncos and Bengals. The Bengals are at home, and they absolutely have to win this game to stay alive for the playoff hunt. But the Broncos are also looking to stay, to secure that 7th seed, or, at least the 7th seed. And I don't know, this is going to be a close game. I really think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter, but I got the Bengals winning this one. Next up, Rams and Cardinals. I know it's in Arizona, and they're probably pissed off that they just got eliminated, but I'm taking the Rams, and if they win this game, I believe they win the division and knock out Seattle. Next up, Cowboys and Eagles. Jalen Hurts is out, but I still think Kenny Pickett played okay, and the Cowboys are shutting down CeeDee Lamb, so I'm taking the Eagles in this one. Next up, Panthers and Bucks. The Bucks are back at home. They need this win to stay in the playoff hunt and win their division against the Falcons. So I'm going to take the Bucs in this one. Next up, Jets and Bills. We should win this game pretty easily. We're still fighting for that 2 seed. We don't want to lose because that'll still keep the Ravens in contention for the 2 seed. So I think we get it done at home this week. Next up, Colts and Giants. We know the Giants are a bad team. The Colts are still fighting to stay in the playoff hunt, so I'm taking the Colts. Next up, Raiders and Saints. Another game between 2 bad teams. I'm going to take the Raiders based off last week. The Saints just looked horrible. They didn't even score. The Raiders got the win at home against another bad team, the Jaguars, but I'm still taking the Raiders. And another bad game, Titans versus Jags. I'm only taking the Jaguars simply because they're at home. Next up, Dolphins and Browns. We know the Browns are not a good team, and the Dolphins are still fighting to stay in the playoff hunt, so I'm taking Miami. Next up, the other big game of the week, Packers and Vikings. I just found out that 4 guys on the defensive side of the ball for Green Bay are going to be out. And the Vikings are back at home, plus they're still fighting for the 1 seed. And if they win this game, it's going to come down to the 1 seed next week, and they're playing Detroit. So that's going to be a massive game. Next up, Atlanta and Washington. Washington is back at home, but Atlanta's still fighting for their division against the Bucs. But I'm taking Washington in a close one. And the Monday night game, Lions and Niners. Lions are still fighting for that 1 seed like I just mentioned, and the division, and I think they get the win on the road. So with that being said, let me just recap who I picked. Steelers, Ravens, Seahawks, Chargers, Bengals, Rams, Eagles, Bucks, Bills, Colts, Raiders, Jags, Dolphins, Vikings, Washington, and the Lions. So I already missed 1 game, so obviously I can't go perfect. I did pick the Steelers, but let's see how good I can do this week. Maybe I'll go 15-1. And next week's going to be my last week to see if I can go perfect, but we'll see what happens. I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year. It's crazy to say that this year's already gone, but good luck to your team this week, except for the Jets. You guys can go to hell, and go Bills.